His Excellency Pedro L.D. González is Cuba's ambassador to Ghana, and he is our guest on Diplomatic Affairs. Your Excellency, bienvenido.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much.
Now let's begin with Cuba. Cuba is an island of about 11 million people. Am I right?
Yes, actually, let me tell you that, in fact, Cuba is an archipelago. Cuba is composed by more than 1,000 islands and small cays. So we're in the Caribbean, and as you have said, we are composed by 11.2 million inhabitants. Talking about history, because it's important to talk about history, we were colonized by Spain, but our original inhabitants, they were killed. So that's why we received in that era the African slave that they were brought to the Americas. And Cuba was an important recipient of the slave. So that's why the composition of the Cuban population is composed by white people, black people, and the mix, the mulattoes. So we are 11.2 million inhabitants, as I have said before, and part of the population have a very strong link with Africa. It's not part of the population, but actually most of the Cuban population, we have a strong link with Africa. It's not only, you can see that in our way of dress, in our culture, the way we dance, our food, that is also a very important link that we have with Africa. And I have the possibility to be here in Ghana just to feel at home in Africa. And you can be sure that the connection between Cuba and Africa is going to be stronger, stronger, stronger for the future.
Now, talking about the relationship between Cuba and Africa, let's zoom down to the relationship between Cuba and Ghana. Ghana was one of the very first countries to have established diplomatic relations with Cuba. Could you please take us through this journey?
Exactly. So actually, Ghana was the first country to recognize the Cuban Revolution in sub-Saharan Africa. So we established a diplomatic relation officially 23rd December 1959. But what happened before? The former Prime Minister Fidel Castro and the former Prime Minister Kwame Nkrumah, they met in US.
In New York, to be
precise. In New York, But it was a very interesting meeting. It was in the Teresa Hotel in a black neighborhood in the US, in New York. And they decided to reestablish a relation. It was in August 1959. And just immediately in December 1959, we officially established diplomatic relations. And since that moment till now, it has been a non-stop relation. Apart from the situation, the internal relation, situation that every country has or had. So the most important thing is that it has been a non-stop diplomatic link between the two countries.
Let's discuss the non-aligned movement, which Cuba and Ghana are a part of. Is the movement still relevant?
Yes. The objective of the creation of the non-aligned movement is still on. So the world is facing a lot of challenges. And the non-aligned countries still have a lot of things to do just to put the world in the correct order. So we are still suffering. The non-aligned countries, we are still suffering. The superpowers, they are doing things that they are not correct to really organize the world. So the poorest people, the poorest country, the developing countries, we need to gain the correct space in the world to organize the world. And actually, we are the majority.
So you think we are being looked down on by the superpower countries?
Yes, superpowers, they are trying just to establish their own agenda. And we need to reestablish and to continue fighting to establish our own agenda. And the agenda is not to to conquer, not to surrender any country. It's just to establish normal relations among countries. That's the most important thing.
The strength of cooperation between Ghana and Cuba are basically in education and medical partnership. What are the areas that we are looking at exploring as two nations?
Well, actually, we have a lot of sectors that we can cooperate. Apart from health, apart from education. Okay, health and education, I consider that the base or the basement of this type of cooperation. But in tourism, we have the possibility to cooperate. So we had before the cooperation in the malaria sector, I mean just in fighting malaria. This is something that we are trying just to reestablish. We have the possibility to cooperate in the sugarcane sector. So you have here near the Commander area a very nice place just to produce sugar. And this is another sector that we are in the possibilities just to cooperate. Cleaning beaches, okay, this is another thing.
Yeah.
You are trying
sanitation.
You are trying to develop the tourism sector and having the possibility just to show the visitors, okay, a clean city, a clean coastside, a clean beach is another thing, very important. Also to reestablish what is something that is happening now. Okay, sea is trying just to recover the land that once we took for it, and we have the experience, we have the possibility just to cooperate in this regard. There are a lot of sectors that we are in the possibility just to continue strengthening the relation in a mutual agreement. Okay, very advantageous for the two parties.
How many students do we have studying medicine in Cuba?
Well, so far, just today, there are 243 Ghanaians studying medicine in Cuba.
243?
And 43 Ghanaians.
I see.
Study medicine in Cuba. And next year, hopefully, 229, they are going to be graduated as full doctors.
Let's talk about Cuba's economy and let's delve into the economic blockade that has been imposed on Cuba by the United States. Could you please tell us how diplomatic relations is between Cuba and the United States?
Yes. This is a compulsory question.
It is.
Exactly.
It is.
Talking about history, because history is important to understand the position of Cuba. Once the Cuban Revolution triumphed in 1959, we want to control our country. Okay, so if you have a house, so you are not allowed anybody just to go into your house to control. You have to control your house. So that's what we established since 1959. But the country, the United States of America, decided in 1961 to break the diplomatic relation, because some measures that we established, gaining the industry to the Cuban side, having or granting the peasant the land, but somebody was angry, and they decided to break the diplomatic relation. But in 1962, they established a very strong blockade against us. Blockade that has been getting stronger since that moment till now.
And that was initiated by John F. Kennedy.
John F. Kennedy. Okay, we can talk a lot about that, but talking just on the blockade, since that moment till now, having a break time during the Obama administration in terms of what he wanted to do, but not what exactly he did, because even during the Obama administration, the blockade was still strong. But so far, we are suffering. Okay, the Cuban country is suffering because of the blockade. The new American administration has tightened the blockade. It's really hard to understand, but once you arrive in Havana, in Cuba in general, you realize what the blockade means. Because if you want to do any international transfer, okay, no, us, Cuban, we are not allowed to transfer with US dollar. And this is something that is not correct. If you want to buy a medicine just to heal a baby, and the medicine is made in US, okay, Cubans, we are not allowed to go and buy the medicine. Even if you want to buy something to place in the country or to place a factory, but if that product has more than 10% of the American product, a spare part, okay, we are not allowed to buy this type of product. Okay, this is something very strong. This is very unjust regarding the Cuban people. The only thing that we want is just to live our country the way the majority of the population has decided, under our system, without any interference. Of course, we have our views. So we want the world to run in another way, not the way it's running now. But we cannot go to any country just to try to overthrow or to change the system it has. So that's our appeal.
What is the United Nations doing about the situation?
Well, in this case, unfortunately, the General Assembly of the UN, we have sent for several years now a resolution against the blockade. Resolution that has been approved by the majority. I mean, last year it was 191 countries that expressed the will to eliminate the blockade. And only 2 countries voted against that. Of course, the United States of America and his best friend, Israel. Exactly. So when you compare, when you put it on one scale, you say, wow, most of the world is against one policy that is trying just to kill one people, one population. And one population that, when you see what the Cuban people has done, is just to help people all over the world. The same way we have done it to Africa. I mean, more than 19,000 Africans has studied in Cuba. 19,000. When you see what are doing the Cuban doctors in the world, mainly in Africa, treating people, healing people. So it's not correct what the United States of America is doing against us. We are not afraid of them. We, as we did in 2014, we are in the possibility and the position just to talk and to solve all the differences on the table. But it's curious, for example, you know that they have one military base based in Cuba, occupying by a portion of the Cuban soil, something that started in last century. What will happen if we have a military base in US? So a government, a full government backing for all the people, and the only thing that we were saying, okay, we need our territory back. Because that's agreement, there is no agreement in the world that you lend something just forever. It's a contradiction.
Yeah.
So how come, okay, they are going to occupy a portion of one territory that doesn't belong to them just forever? They are paying something.
That check was cashed once.
But we are not taking
that money anymore.
Any amount of money. No, never. Okay, since 1959, we are not taking any portion of that money.
How much are we talking about? Is it?
So now it's around 4,000 US dollars. 4,000 US dollars for one territory, okay, with one bay in a beautiful place in Cuba. It's not possible. It's an offense to the people. It's an offense to, okay, the way we treat, okay, the world. But they are there. But apart from the military base, they have used that portion of the Cuban territory just to yell people, so-called terrorists. So when we talk about Afghanians, Pakistanis, okay, they are held there in that portion of the Cuban territory without any law, violating all the laws that they know very well. But we are not going to surrender. We are going to continue asking for the reestablishment of this territory with the Cuban flag, for 100% the Cuban flag in that territory. We are not going to lose our temper. We are not going to lose the way we are talking. But there is something sure, that's for sure. That part of the Cuban territory is going to return to Cuba. It's going to return to Cuba. That's for sure.
Well, we are waiting for that day.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the Cuban community here in Ghana.
Well, actually, it's around 100 people, more or less 100 people. Most of them is very curious. It's part of the very strong bonds that we have. Most of them, they are women that are married with some Ghanaian who study in Cuba, and they are living here. But they are Cuban Ghanaians, Ghanaians Cubans. But they hadn't lost, okay, what we call in Spanish, la cubanía. Okay, the way to feel Cuban wherever you are.
La cubanía.
La cubanía, exactly. They are living well. They are living here without any problem. Talking about the visit to Cuba, okay, you are highly invited to go.
Thank you. We will be there with my team.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
We would like to visit, is it Havana?
Yes, Havana or
right.
any
It's a
place,
beautiful place, I've been told.
any place you can visit there.
Thank you very much for speaking to us.